If you ever find yourself at the Crescent Hotel, don't book room 6B. I'm not saying this as some kind of campfire scare tactic, or to get clicks, or to sound dramatic. I'm saying it because I spent one night there, and I'm still not sure if I made it back in one piece. I know how it sounds: ridiculous, exaggerated, the kind of urban legend you'd see in the depths of a Reddit thread. But I need you to understand something. There are places that want you. Places that wait, patiently, until someone careless enough walks through their door. And 6B is one of those places. Even saying its number feels like pressing on a bruise. I shouldn't be telling you this. Honestly, I think the hotel counts on people like me keeping quiet, shrugging it off as bad dreams, refusing to put it into words. But silence doesn't make it safer. If anything, it makes the trap harder to see. And you don't want to walk into a trap like this without knowing what you're stepping into. I thought I was just being adventurous. A solo trip, a little detour, a chance to check an old rumor off my personal bucket list. People online called the Crescent the most haunted hotel in the country. Creepy stories, strange photos, grainy YouTube uploads of doors slamming shut in the middle of the night. I laughed at all of it. Who wouldn't? It felt like folklore made for teenagers and bored insomniacs. But the thing about folklore is, it doesn't come from nowhere. That night, when I closed the door to 6B behind me, I thought I was stepping into just another slightly overpriced hotel room. A bed, a lamp, a tiny TV bolted to the wall. Harmless, familiar, mundane. The kind of space you could scroll on your phone in, eat stale vending machine snacks, and fall asleep without a second thought. But the truth is, some spaces aren't meant to feel familiar. They only mimic familiarity the way a predator mimics a sound to lure its prey. And 6B were normalcy like a mask. I keep asking myself what would have happened if I'd just ignored the rumors, or if I'd picked literally any other room. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'd be fine. Or maybe the Crescent would have found another way to draw me in. Because if there's one thing I know now, it's that 6B isn't just a room. It's something else. Something that noticed me the moment I touched the key. You'll want answers. You'll want to know what I saw, what I heard, why I left before sunrise with a scratch down my arm that no one could explain. But I need to take you back to the beginning, to the exact moment I decided this stupid, reckless idea was worth the risk. Because if you don't understand how ordinary it seemed at first, you won't understand why I stayed. And understanding why I stayed might be the only thing that keeps you from making the same mistake. The trip to the Crescent wasn't supposed to feel ominous. It started like any other road trip. Gas station coffee, radio static blending into half-forgotten playlists, the hypnotic blur of highway lines pulling me towards somewhere new. The weather was stubbornly ordinary too. Gray skies, no thunder, no dramatic fog rolling in to warn me off. If you're expecting cinematic signs, forget it. That's the thing about these places, they don't need theatrics. They hide inside routine. The town appeared like a postcard someone had left in the sun too long. Quaint, faded, half-empty. A diner with neon that buzzed like it was hanging on for dear life. A main street dotted with antique shops. And that feeling you get in small towns where everyone knows you don't belong. As I drove through, people looked up from porches and sidewalks. Not unfriendly, exactly, but cautious, like I'd just stepped onto a stage where they'd been rehearsing something behind closed curtains. I stopped for coffee at that diner, because why not? I figured I'd ask about the hotel, maybe catch someone off guard enough to tell me a real story instead of the ghost tour version. The waitress froze when I mentioned where I was staying. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't cross herself or whisper, but she did that thing people do when they want to say something and can't. She just asked if I was booked in one of the front rooms. When I told her 6B, she blinked, forced a smile, and said, Good luck. I laughed, because that's what you do when you don't want to feel stupid. She didn't laugh back. By the time I reached the Crescent, I'd convinced myself it was just local flavor. Small towns survive on stories, right? Make the tourists feel spooked, sell a few keychains. Easy money. But when the hotel came into view, my confidence wavered. The Crescent was beautiful, grand even. The kind of sprawling, old-world architecture that makes you think of champagne glasses and ballroom dances. Stone walls, ivy climbing across one side, tall windows that caught the late afternoon light. From a distance, it didn't look haunted. It looked timeless, safe. But beauty, I've learned, is the best camouflage. Up close, the cracks showed. Literally. The stonework was chipped in places, and the ivy seemed more suffocating than decorative, like it was trying to reclaim the building. I caught myself staring at the windows, and for half a second, I was sure someone was staring back. When I blinked, the glass was empty again. Inside, the lobby carried that heavy hush old buildings have, like it was always holding its breath. Chandeliers glowed overhead, but their light was just a little too dim, as if electricity itself didn't fully want to enter the space. The receptionist smiled politely, but her eyes flicked to the key she handed me like it burned her fingers. "Room 6B, she said softly, almost like she hoped I wouldn't hear. I wanted to make a joke. What's with the tone? Haunted or something? But something in her expression shut me down. Instead, I signed the paperwork, thanked her, and carried my bag upstairs. The staircase creaked underfoot. Hallways stretched longer than they should have, lined with wallpaper that was a little too yellowed, portraits whose painted eyes seemed to follow movement. Normal, explainable things. Old buildings are supposed to creak. Old wallpaper is supposed to fade. And yet, with every step, the air pressed heavier, like the hotel itself was paying attention. I told myself it was nerves, nothing more. I told myself locals like to spook outsiders, and staff like to play along. But by the time I reached the door to 6B, hand hovering over the key, that casual logic felt paper thin. And the moment the lock clicked, normalcy stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like bait. I didn't ask about 6B right away. It felt too on the nose, like admitting I was already spooked. But curiosity is a stubborn thing, and by the next morning, after my first uneasy night of half sleep, I found myself in the hotel's lounge with a stack of brittle newspapers they kept for historical interest. The Crescent liked to boast about its history. Grand opening in the 1880s, once a resort for the wealthy, later a hospital, then abandoned, then revived as a hotel again. The brochures in the lobby painted it as elegant, even romantic. The newspapers told a different story. Local teacher falls to death from window, read one headline from the 1920s. Traveling salesman disappears. Last seen entering hotel, said another. A string of suicides, unexplained injuries, guests checking in and never checking out. Not hundreds, just enough to make you notice a pattern. And buried in the middle of all that, there it was, room 6B, mentioned by name. I skimmed a faded column about a young woman who had taken her own life there in the 1940s. But the details didn't fit the official story. She was supposed to have hanged herself from the light fixture, but one staff member insisted there was no sign of strangulation. Just bruises, like she'd been gripped by something stronger than human hands. The article cut off mid-sentence, as if the rest had been censored. Later that day, I struck up a conversation with the maintenance guy while he fiddled with a radiator near the hallway. He was middle-aged, tired-eyed, the kind of man who seemed allergic to small talk. But when I casually mentioned my room, his wrench stilled in his hand. 6B, he asked, voice low. Yeah, I said. What's the story with it? He glanced around, like checking if anyone else was listening. "You're better off not asking." "I already did." I pushed. "Newspapers, suicides, all that." He shook his head. "Paper doesn't print the truth. They can't. People wouldn't come here if they knew." "Know what?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice until I could barely hear. "That room don't just take lives. It keeps them. That's why you hear footsteps at night, or see the curtains move when the windows are closed. It's them still stuck. And sometimes it wants more company." Before I could press further, he stood abruptly, muttered something about work, and left me with that half-answer gnawing at my thoughts. At dinner, I tried again with one of the servers. She only smiled tightly and said, "Legends are good for business." But her eyes betrayed something sharper: fear, or maybe recognition. The old man from the diner said it best, though. When I returned for another coffee, he squinted at me and muttered, "Paper tells half the truth. Room 6B tells the rest." Then he refused to say another word. I could have taken it as a warning. Any sane person would have. Instead, I shrugged it off, convincing myself it was all just folklore, stitched together from tragedy and exaggeration. And that was the lie that let me walk back into 6B that night, pretending I was safe. Back in 6B, I tried to convince myself it was just another room. I unpacked my bag, laid my clothes neatly in the dresser, even set my toothbrush on the sink like I always do when traveling. Normal routines, normal gestures. The kind that anchor you, that whisper everything is fine. The shower was lukewarm, the water pressure weak but serviceable. Steam fogged the mirror, and for a fleeting moment, I let myself relax. But when I wiped the glass with my hand, there was something odd. The condensation had streaked in lines, vertical, like fingers dragging downward. I told myself it was just gravity. Water behaves strangely on old glass, that's all. But I dried off faster than usual. The room itself was comfortable in theory. The mattress was firm, the sheets smelled freshly laundered, and the lamp on the nightstand cast a soft glow. I stretched out on the bed, scrolled through my phone, flicking between messages, TikTok, YouTube. The familiar blue-white light should have grounded me. But every so often, the lamp would flicker. Not in the usual random way. It pulsed, almost like breathing. That was the first time I noticed the smell. Not constant, but drifting in waves, like burnt matches, sharp and metallic. It clung to the air, then faded, leaving me wondering if I'd imagined it. My stomach tightened. I knew that smell from somewhere, though I couldn't place it. Lying there, I caught myself listening too hard. The kind of listening you do when silence isn't really silent. And sure enough, beneath the hum of the old AC unit, there were sounds. Muffled, like voices behind a wall. Not TV chatter or music. Actual words, low, urgent, indistinct. I pressed my ear to the wall, holding my breath. The voices stopped instantly. I pulled back, heart thudding. That's when I realized the room next to mine was vacant. I'd seen the booking chart at reception. 6A and 6C were empty. The logical part of my brain screamed coincidence. Old pipes, settling wood, maybe even a faint echo from the lobby downstairs. But another part, the part that remembered the maintenance man's warning, knew better. The silence after the voices was too deliberate. Like whatever was speaking had realized I was listening. I turned the TV on just for background noise, settling on some late-night rerun. The laugh track felt fake, brittle, but it was better than the stillness. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that every time I glanced at the mirror on the wall, something shifted. Not a shape, not a face, just a wrongness in the reflection, as if the angles weren't matching up with reality. I lay back again, phone in hand, trying to lose myself in the scroll. But the dread was a weight now, pressing at the edges of the ordinary. Every small comfort, warm sheets, glowing screen, hum of the AC, felt staged, propped up like scenery in front of something else. Something waiting. That was when I decided to record the night. A simple plan: set my phone on the nightstand, hit record, and let it capture whatever happened while I pretended to sleep. Proof, I told myself. Either proof that it was all in my head, or proof I wasn't alone. Midnight always has a way of making ordinary spaces feel thinner, like the air itself is stretched too tight. In 6B, the change was sharp, like a switch being flipped. I'd left my phone recording on the nightstand, screen dimmed, mic listening. At first, nothing happened. Just the steady hum of the AC, the occasional creak from the hallway. I almost laughed at myself, lying there under the sheets, scrolling TikTok like some nervous kid at a sleepover. But then, right around 12:07, I heard the footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. They came from above me, heel to toe pacing across the ceiling. That shouldn't have been possible. The receptionist had told me the entire floor above mine was closed off for renovations. No guests, no staff, no reason for footsteps. I froze, staring up at the plaster as dust trickled down from one of the seams. The steps stopped when I held my breath, like whoever, or whatever, was up there had paused to listen back. I wanted to tell myself it was pipes, or maybe a raccoon, but pipes don't walk in measured patterns, and raccoons don't stop when you stop breathing. I put my headphones on, desperate to drown it out. Opened YouTube, let the autoplay run through random videos. But even there, I wasn't safe. Every few minutes, the static would creep in. Just a hiss at first, then something else buried in it. A rhythm, then syllables, whispers woven between the noise. At one point, I swear I heard my name. You'll think I'm exaggerating. I know how it sounds. Paranoid, sleep-deprived. But I'm telling you, if you think I'm making this up, check the recording. I uploaded a clip once. People begged me to take it down. Some said they heard nothing. Others swore they heard things I never mentioned. Different voices, different names. I won't link it here. I don't recommend looking for it. The static died as suddenly as it began, replaced by the canned laughter of a sitcom. That was somehow worse, because it felt staged, like the room itself wanted me lulled back into comfort. I switched to TikTok, desperate for something brainless. A cooking video, a dance loop, a cat playing piano. Harmless stuff. Then, mid-swipe, the algorithm glitched. The screen froze on an image I'd never seen before. A dark room, a bed identical to mine, and a figure hunched at the edge of it, blurred like a bad live stream. I swiped again, hard, and it was gone. Just another influencer hawking skincare products. My chest tightened, breath coming too shallow. The footsteps upstairs had started again, slower this time, like the walker knew I was cornered. Every few seconds, they stopped, perfectly aligned with my pulse. I grabbed the remote and cranked the TV volume up. Laughter and commercials filled the air, pushing back against the silence. But deep beneath it, I could still hear the whispering. Not through the walls now. From inside the room, a draft brushed the back of my neck. The curtains swayed though the windows were latched shut. My eyes darted to the nightstand. The phone screen had gone black, but in the faint glow, I could see the timer still running. Recording, capturing every second. That thought was the only thing keeping me from bolting. Proof. I just needed proof. If I made it to morning, I'd have evidence that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't alone in 6B. But as the clock ticked closer to 1, I realized proof might not be enough. Because whatever was in that room wasn't just content with being recorded. It wanted me to notice it. It started with the temperature. 1 second the room was heavy with the kind of stale warmth old hotels hold on to, and the next it plunged like I'd opened a walk-in freezer. My breath came out in thin clouds. The lamp flickered again, then steadied, but its glow had a strange greenish tinge now, like pond water. I sat up slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around me. "All right," I muttered, my voice hoarse. Point made. I didn't know who I was talking to. Maybe myself, maybe the empty air, but saying something out loud felt less insane than sitting in silence. A cold spot drifted across the room, brushing against my legs like an invisible tide. The curtains fluttered as if something had moved past them. I forced a laugh. "Okay, nice special effects," I said. "You should really charge more for this room." The joke came out flat, trembling around the edges. That's when I saw the shadow. It clung to the far corner where the wall met the ceiling, too dark, too dense. Not the kind of shadow cast by furniture, but something with weight, shape, intent. It stretched a little farther every time the lamp flickered, creeping along the wall like spilled ink. I swallowed hard, fumbling for my phone. The recording was still running. The timer ticked up, steady and calm, like nothing unusual was happening. I pointed the camera at the corner. The screen showed nothing but wallpaper. But when I lowered the phone, the shadow was there again, longer now, almost reaching the floor. "Stop it," I said louder this time. "I'm not scared." It was a lie so obvious I almost laughed again. The door handle rattled. Not once, but rhythmically, like someone trying a code. I froze, every nerve screaming. The door's bolt lock clicked open on its own, slow and deliberate, and the knob turned halfway before stopping. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Who's there?" I called out. Silence. "Front desk?" "Maintenance." My voice cracked on the last word. The knob twitched again. Then nothing. I forced myself off the bed, feet sinking into the carpet as though it had thickened, grown heavier. The air buzzed faintly, like the low hum of a transformer. I reached the door, grabbed the handle, yanked it shut, and locked it again. The bolt slid back into place with a sound like a sigh. Behind me, the TV sputtered, picture warping into static. For a heartbeat, a face flickered on the screen. Not a human face, not really. Too many eyes, too many teeth. Then gone. "Okay," I whispered, voice shaking. "That's new." I turned back toward the bed. The blanket I'd pulled around myself was no longer crumpled where I'd left it. It was smooth flat, tucked at the corners like someone had made it up, and the indentation of another body pressed into the mattress beside the pillow. I stared at it, throat closing. "This isn't funny," I said. "You're not funny." Something shifted under the covers, a slow ripple as though a hand was dragging along the sheet from underneath. I stumbled backward until my knees hit the dresser. The shadow in the corner had reached the floor now, pooling like liquid, stretching toward the bed frame. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, then went dark. I grabbed it, thumb hovering over the screen, but the display was black, unresponsive. In the reflection of the glass, I thought I saw a movement, a pale shape where there shouldn't be one. The indentation deepened, like whoever, or whatever, was lying there had rolled onto their side to face me. My chest locked, and that's when I realized. I breathed. The bed was already occupied. The shadow surged up the wall behind the headboard, spilling onto the ceiling like smoke under pressure. A voice rose from somewhere I couldn't place, low, intimate, not quite male or female. "Stay," it whispered, directly into my ear, though nothing was beside me. I lunged for the door again, fingers clawing at the bolt, my only thought to get out. But when I turned it, the door didn't open. It felt soft, pliant, like pushing against wet clay. The air thickened, carrying the smell of burnt matches again, sharper this time, metallic enough to sting. The curtains bulged inward as though a wind blew from the hallway. My teeth chattered. "Enough," I croaked. I'm leaving. But the room wasn't letting me. Every surface pulsed faintly, the wallpaper patterns shifting like living things. My reflection in the mirror by the door moved a fraction slower than I did. Eyes wide, mouth open in a silent warning I couldn't hear. That was the moment when any illusion of safety vanished. The hotel wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it wanted me to stay. The bolt finally gave way, and the door swung open, too easily, like it had been waiting for me. I didn't hesitate. I bolted into the hallway, heart hammering, breath ragged. The corridor stretched ahead, its carpet a faded maroon that swallowed sound. I ran toward the exit sign, glowing faintly at the far end. But as I sprinted, the distance didn't shrink. The sign hovered in the same spot, like a mirage in the desert. I stopped, panting, and spun around. My room, 6B, was just a few feet behind me. No, I muttered. No, I just ran. I tried again, sprinting harder this time. The sound of my footsteps echoing unnaturally, hollow and delayed. I reached the end of the hall, except I didn't. Room 6B stood there again, door closed, its brass number plate gleaming like a taunt. I grabbed the nearest doorknob, twisted it. It wouldn't budge. Tried another, then another. Every single door was locked tight. Behind one of them, faintly, I swore I heard breathing. Help! I shouted, pounding on the wood. Somebody, open up. No one answered. I turned toward the elevator at the hall's midpoint, its old iron grate slightly ajar. I yanked it open and jabbed at the down button until my thumb ached. The light blinked once, and with a groan the elevator descended. The cables creaked, the gears clanked, and finally the doors slid apart. Inside, the elevator wasn't empty. A man in a bellhop's uniform stood there, hat pulled low, face in shadow. His smile looked painted on, too wide, too stiff. Going down? He asked, voice syrupy and wrong. My gut screamed no. I stepped back, shaking my head. I'll take the stairs. His grin didn't falter, but his eyes, black, reflective, like oil slicks, followed me as the doors shut again. I stumbled to the stairwell, flung the door open, and nearly sobbed with relief at the sight of concrete steps spiraling downward. I bounded down 2 flights, 3, my lungs searing. But when I burst through the door onto what should have been the lobby, my stomach turned cold. I was back on the 6th floor, standing in front of room 6B. No, I whispered. My voice cracked like glass. The hallway stretched quiet around me, oppressive in its stillness. My phone buzzed in my hand. A notification lit up the dead screen. Impossibly, battery 1%. Would you like to check out? I dropped it like it burned me. The phone hit the carpet without a sound, screen still glowing. And then I heard it, the murmur of voices. Low, hushed, dozens of them bleeding through the walls. They weren't speaking any language I knew. It was chanting, rhythmic, ancient. I stumbled toward the lobby, determined to find anyone real. The front desk was empty. The bell sat there, tarnished, waiting. I rang it, the sharp ding echoing far too long. A woman emerged from the back room, wearing the same crisp uniform as when I'd checked in. But her smile was wrong now, stretched too tight. Her eyes didn't blink. Sir, she said, voice flat. Your stay has only just begun. I backed away. What are you? Her smile faltered, like the question annoyed her. For a split second, her face blurred, features swimming as though her skin was a mask she hadn't adjusted properly. Behind her, in the shadows, I thought I saw others, staff members standing perfectly still, heads tilted in unison, waiting. And a thought pierced me, sharp and undeniable. What if the staff weren't employees at all, but something else? I turned and ran again. The lobby doors loomed ahead, glass panes reflecting my panicked face. I crashed into them with all my weight, only for the glass to ripple, soft and resistant, like pressing against a thick membrane. It pushed me back. I staggered, gasping, and before I knew it, I was in the hallway again. Room 6B right in front of me. Door cracked open just enough to look like an invitation. The chanting grew louder. The air pressed heavy against my chest. Defeated, trembling, I stumbled forward. My legs moved on their own, weak, unsteady. The door yawned wider, and I crossed the threshold. As it clicked shut behind me, the whisper in my ear returned, colder, sure. Welcome back. The room was waiting for me. I could feel it, charged, alive, the walls breathing in rhythm with my own panicked lungs. The chanting I'd heard in the halls had followed me inside, but now it was everywhere at once, vibrating through the floorboards, seeping from the wallpaper. I pressed my back against the door, fumbling for the lock, but the bolt slid shut on its own with a metallic snap. Trapped again. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. That's when the shadows peeled themselves off the corners. At first, I thought it was a trick of the dim lamp, shapes stretching too long, refusing to snap back. But then they thickened, pooling together in the far corner until they formed something taller than the ceiling should allow. A figure emerged, shifting and unfinished, as though it were being drawn in real time by a trembling hand. "You've lasted longer than most," it said. The voice wasn't one. It was many, layered whispers all trying to speak at once. Male, female, child, old, all woven together until it scraped against my nerves. My throat was dry, but I forced words out. What are you?" The shape leaned forward, its edges flickering like static. Not a what. Never a what. Always a who. Always a guest. The phrase made my stomach twist. Guest. Once. Its tone almost carried a laugh, low and bitter. Before this place became mine. Before I learned how to stay when others left. I staggered backward until the bed hit the backs of my knees. Why me? Why room 6B? The thing seemed to ripple at the question, its outline shuddering like a bad signal. Not 6B. Not only. Every room tells a story. Yours just opened first. It raised something that resembled a hand, and for a flash I saw images, not on the walls, but in my head. Other doors, other numbers. 3C, 8A, 12D. Faces of strangers flickered past, eyes wide, mouths open in screams I couldn't hear. And then silence. "How many?" I whispered. The shadows swelled larger, almost filling the room. Dozens. Hundreds. Enough to remember, never enough to be full. The air turned colder, every breath stabbing like knives. My legs trembled, but I tried to stand taller. "You feed on us." "On fear," it corrected gently, mockingly. "On the moment you realize the world is not yours to trust. When you know the hallways will never end, the staff will never help, the doors will never open. That's when you belong to me." It moved closer, and I swear the floor sagged beneath its weight. I tried to back away, but the bed stopped me cold. I forced a shaky laugh, bitter as bile. "So I'm just another story to you? Another body on the list?" The shadows twitched, and for a moment, the figure almost looked amused. "Not just a story. A link. You carry their echoes now. Every word you speak of this place, every memory you replay, feeds the chain. That's why you shouldn't be telling anyone." The hairs on my arms stood stiff. It knew. It knew I was recording. That I was confessing to you. "What happens if I don't?" My voice cracked, but I needed to ask. The figure tilted its head, movements jerky, broken. "Then more will come. They always do. Curiosity is a sharper hook than terror. You tell the story, and the next guest books their stay. Room 6B remains alive. A realization punched through me. It doesn't just trap us, it uses us. A cycle, a lure. Every frightened whisper about the Crescent, every legend told in diners and blogs and comment sections, it all drove more people straight into its waiting arms. The figure loomed closer, bending down until the shape of a face hovered inches from mine. Its features shifted, cycling through dozens of others. Hollow eyes, torn lips, faces I didn't recognize but knew belonged to those who never left. "You understand now," it murmured. "That's why you'll stay? Why they all stay?" I clenched my fists, nails biting my palms, trying not to collapse. "I'm not staying." A silence fell, heavy and thick, before it answered in a dozen overlapping voices. "You already are." The lights blew out. Pitch black swallowed me whole. But the entity didn't vanish. It bloomed, filling every inch of darkness, pressing against my chest, crawling inside my skull. My heart thundered, ears ringing, body locked in place as if nailed down. Through the suffocating void, the voice coiled one last time. "When they ask about you, I'll tell them a new story. Yours." The floor tilted, my vision blurred. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the whisper curling right against my ear. Soft, intimate, final. "Welcome to the family." Then, nothing. I woke to sunlight pressing through the curtains like nothing had happened. Golden, warm, almost too bright after the suffocating dark of the night. For a few seconds, I let myself believe it had all been a dream. A fever, a nightmare my brain stitched together from bad diner coffee and ghost stories. The room was still. The furniture stood exactly where it had been. The lamps were intact, bulbs glowing politely. The sheets felt crisp and cool against my skin. Too normal. I sat up slowly, half expecting the shadows to recoil, for the floor to shift beneath me. Nothing. Just the low hum of the AC and birds calling outside the window. When I stumbled out into the hallway, the carpet was neat, the air fresh, as though no one had ever whispered through its walls. The exit sign that had mocked me last night now glowed steadily, a harmless green. Down in the lobby, the staff greeted me with bright, empty smiles. "Did you enjoy your stay?" the receptionist asked, as if her face hadn't warped hours before. I tried to study her eyes, her expression, searching for a crack in the facade. Last night, my throat tightened. "Room 6B. Something happened." She tilted her head in a gesture so perfectly rehearsed it felt robotic. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. Guests never report problems in that room." A laugh, dry, humorless, escaped me. "Of course they don't." Her smile didn't waver. The bellhop passed by, offering to take my bags. His uniform was crisp, his hat tilted just so. For a flicker of a second, I thought I saw his eyes, those same black, reflective pits from the elevator, but when I blinked, they were ordinary brown. Daylight made everything look safe. Normal. But it was a false safety, a painted set over rotten beams. I almost convinced myself to leave it at that, to walk away and never speak of it again. But then, back in the room as I packed my things, I found it. A scratch down my forearm. 3 thin, parallel lines etched deep into the skin, angry red, still fresh. Too precise to be an accident, too deliberate to ignore. And then there was my phone. Battery dead, though I'd left it plugged in overnight. When I powered it back up later, a single file sat on the recorder app. Untitled. Timestamp 12:07 a.m. I haven't played it all the way through. Only the first few seconds. The footsteps. The static. A voice that wasn't mine whispering something I won't repeat here. So is it real? Or did the hotel plant the evidence to make me believe it was? I can't say for certain. But the scratch burns, and the file is still on my phone. Daylight makes it easy to doubt. But when the sun goes down, when the shadows start to thicken, there's no room for doubt left. And that's why, if you ever find yourself at the Crescent Hotel, if they hand you the key for room 6B, don't stay the night. I shouldn't be telling you this. Honestly, I've thought about deleting every word of it, pretending it never happened. Just walking away and convincing myself the scratch on my arm is from a bramble bush, that the recording on my phone is corrupted data, that none of this is real. But if I do that, I'm no better than the staff at the Crescent, smiling, denying, luring the next person in. So listen to me carefully. If you ever book a room at the Crescent Hotel, if they hand you a brass key marked 6B, don't take it. Don't even touch it. Give it back. Ask for another room. Or better yet, turn around and leave. Drive until the hotel is nothing but a shadow in your rearview mirror. Because it isn't just haunted. It isn't just a story the locals pass around at diners for tips. It's something else, something old, something hungry. And every person who dares to step inside 6B becomes a part of it. You think I'm exaggerating? Fine. Prove me wrong. Go there yourself. Book the room, close the door behind you, and wait for midnight. But don't come crawling back to me if you hear the footsteps. Don't say I didn't warn you when the static starts whispering your name. Some of you are curious enough that this warning won't matter. I know how people are. Curiosity outweighs fear. You'll treat it like a dare, like a challenge. You'll tell yourself it's just a creepy story some stranger on the internet spun for clicks. And that's exactly what the hotel wants. That's the part that eats at me, more than the memories, more than the nightmares. The hotel uses us. Every story whispered about it, every rumor, every video or post or late-night retelling. It all drives more people toward its doors, toward that room, toward the thing waiting inside. You're part of the chain now too, just by listening, just by knowing. I don't know if that makes you safer or marks you, but I do know this. The Crescent Hotel is still open, still running its business, still handing out keys. People check in every day, smiling for photos in the grand lobby, sipping wine in the dining hall. They don't know. They can't. And behind one of those polished brass doors, something waits for them. Maybe for you. So if you value your life, if you value your mind, if you ever loved the sound of silence or the warmth of daylight, don't go looking for room 6B. Don't give the hotel your name. Don't feed it another story. Because it doesn't need me anymore. It already has someone else. Someone just booked room 6B for tonight.